introduce our speaker for the day, and it is our wonderful Okay, boy, I just can't get that. And Margaret Canavan has been a long-time member, and she has been a member since 1998. Let's welcome Margaret Canavan.
I'm going to try to be at the right distance. Okay, how's this? Is this good if I don't move? Okay. I wanted Vicki to say what I wanted her to say about me, and she didn't want to, is that I have been a member since 1998. That was the year that Stan retired, and he took a 3-month camping trip. And while he was gone, I bought 2 houses and joined this fellowship. So he hasn't done that again. He's stayed closer to home. And this is very awkward, I will say. If you've come to hear me speak, you will hear me speak, but I am speaking the words of another. This is really a fire and brimstone UU sermon by Reverend Michael McGee, who you've already heard about. He married one of our members. He spoke last week at Chautauqua, and he was a 40-year active minister, retired now, but still obviously speaking from time to time. And if at any point you can't hear me, let me know. Okay, just raise your hand. Oh, he gave this sermon in 2007, but it's still very timely. But it is fire and brimstone, I will tell you. I'm going to start out. I accuse each and every one of you of being a Unitarian Universalist. How do you plead? Raise your hand if you're okay. All right. Even though you've pled guilty, is there enough evidence to convict you? If your family and friends were called to the stand and that rude prosecutor asked them, would you testify that this individual has proclaimed the principles of the Unitarian Universalist faith and has lived by those principles? Would they say, as I hope they would, absolutely? And I already need water. This will be a long sermon. It's getting hot in here. So would your friends say, there is no doubt in my mind that the accused is a bona fide, verified, committed, card-carrying, generous, pledge-paying Unitarian Universalist? Or might they say, I had no idea. Are you sure we're talking about the same person? If you were accused of being a Unitarian Universalist, would you be convicted, or would you get off scot-free? Would your expressed beliefs and lived out actions make it apparent to all that you are a person who embodies your ideals in everyday life? Or would it be evident that you are more like the comedian Elmo Phillips, who said, when I was a kid, I used to pray every night for a new bicycle. Then I realized that the Lord doesn't work that way, so I stole one and asked for forgiveness. Now, this may all seem a bit drastic, putting Unitarian Universalists on trial for their religious beliefs. Who would do such a thing? But for most of our history, it's been dangerous to be a Unitarian or Universalist. The father of Unitarianism, the Spaniard Michael Servetus, was found guilty of believing in one God, and for that, John Calvin burned him at the stake. The Hungarian minister Francis David was found guilty of believing that Jesus was a man instead of a god, and he died in a dungeon. The Czech minister Norbert Capek, or Sapek, I think, was executed by the Nazis for protecting Jews. Opponents threw bricks through the windows of John Murray's Universalist church in Boston because he believed that God was too good to damn people. Unitarian minister Theodore Parker composed his sermons with a loaded revolver on his desk while giving sanctuary to runaway slaves. Unitarian Susan B. Anthony was arrested simply for voting. And even in our own time, we have martyrs like James Reeb, a Unitarian minister, and Viola Liuzzo, a Unitarian mother of 5, who were both murdered in Selma, Alabama, for daring to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Many other Unitarian Universalists in our lifetime have been persecuted and prosecuted in their struggle for civil rights, free speech, women's liberation, peace, and other issues that affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. It was dangerous as well for those who founded this fellowship in 1951 as they struggled against McCarthyism, segregation, and religious intolerance. And I will say, every now and then I've edited his speech to make it personal to us. Because they founded this fellowship in 1951 when it was not cool to be liberal, kind of like now. The founders of this fellowship risked going head-to-head against the powers of our state and nation, and they gave generously of their time and money to found this fellowship not only for themselves, but for all those who would come after them, such as us. I don't think we have any of those founding members left. Were there any of you present when the fellowship was founded in 1951? I mean, we were alive, right? How about anyone who joined in the 50s, such as Susan Baker, who's waving her hand in the back? She was a baby girl then. Anybody from the 60s? Any of you joined in the 70s? All right. The 80s, we got some 80s people. Okay, 80s, okay. 90s? What do we call them? The Zunies, the Zeros? Okay. And anybody in the teens? Okay, well, we're doing good. And we appreciate those people that founded this fellowship for us. But it takes us all to keep it going. So Unitarian Universalists are still considered dangerous to those who exploit others with irrational superstition and who abuse the rights of the innocent. Let's face it, we are guilty of being members of a revolutionary religious movement, one that throughout history has sought to overthrow old ideas and dogmas while promoting radically new theological and social transformation. Are you guilty of being a part of this revolutionary religious movement? I'd say yes. So, what kind of evidence would be needed to convict you of being a Unitarian Universalist? The first piece of evidence to be presented to the court would be your beliefs. What do you believe and why? What is it that enables you to cope with such crises as the death of a loved one, or divorce, or aging, or injustice? What helps you get up in the morning to face a new day, even though you know the problems will be overwhelming? And what brings joy and purpose to your existence? Reverend Forrest Church said that religion is our human response to the dual reality of being alive and having to die. Another way to put this is a quote you've undoubtedly heard. Life is a test. It is only a test. If this were your actual life, you would have been given better instructions. If only we had been given better instructions, but we must choose nevertheless to either close our eyes to these dual realities, or we can choose to build a system of belief that will respond to life and death with dignity and honesty. We are not told what to believe as you use, but we are encouraged to believe in that which gives us the courage and strength to live life with love and purpose. We challenge each other as well as our children and youth to do the hard work of building our own personal theology by wrestling with the big questions of life, by exploring other religions and cultures, by opening ourselves to the revelations of science and the arts. By learning from our own experiences and the lives of those around us, we can build a theology and an ethical system that keeps us buoyant in the sea of despair and gives us the courage to transform ourselves and the world. So the first piece of evidence to be presented to the court is whether we have a theology that will help us cope with the dual realities of being alive and having to die. The second piece of evidence is that we have the courage to express our convictions. This is a tough one because Unitarian Universalists tend to bend over backwards not to proselytize. but often we do so at the risk of hiding our beliefs from those we know and love. I don't know how many times I've heard members tell me, I've known so-and-so for years, and I just found out that he or she is also a Unitarian Universalist. Why is that? It's because neither person bothered to talk about their beliefs or their church. I'm not encouraging you to shove your belief down anyone's throats, but we will never be convicted of being Unitarian Universalists unless we let others know what we believe and why. In the words of one of Reverend McGee's colleagues, we have a vision for creating a more lovable and livable world. Why are we not out there telling everyone in our community about it? Instead of ridiculing fundamentalists for their seemingly boundless zeal and overly simplistic answers, why are we smugly content with our self-description as the best-kept secret in town? Our cause is for the enhancement of human dignity and for creating inclusive circles of love. That is our gospel. That is our good news. Isn't it about time that we go tell it on the mountain? The last and best piece of evidence to convict someone of being a Unitarian Universalist is by the way we live our lives. My favorite UU soundbite is that it is through deeds, not creeds, that we reveal our faith. How true. But our deeds need to be bold, I told you this fire and brimstone. It's not good enough to simply avoid being evil. Edmund Burke wrote, "All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good people do nothing." Many people are seduced into doing nothing, fooling themselves into thinking that avoiding evil will make them good people. But good people, religious people, need to actively resist those who would negate the inherent worth and dignity of every person. The Dutch author Abel Hertzberg wrote that 6 million Jews did not die in the Holocaust. First one Jew was killed, and then another, 6 million times. And the same is true of the millions of Romanians, Armenians, religious liberals, homosexuals, and disabled people who have perished and continue to perish. To live out our religion, we must avoid being swept up in the facelessness of suffering, whether in the killing fields of Iraq or Darfur or Washington, D.C., and we must resist with all our might the evil that destroys each life. As Jim Wallace proclaims, we are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones who have the responsibility and power to change the world, to beat swords into plowshares, to transform injustice into justice, to struggle against racism and homophobia and global warming, to work for a world free of poverty and hunger. But where do we start? This is the place we've been waiting for. The UU Fellowship of Galveston County is the place where we hold each other lovingly in community, where we deepen our spiritual lives, and where we work hand in hand to heal and give hope to the world. Where better to transform our lives and the world? Reverend McGee quotes his colleague Robert Walsh, who tells the story of someone who did not plead guilty. He writes, "In the newspaper, there was a story about a seminary professor in Kansas City who was put on trial by the Southern Baptists, accused of being a Universalist. It's no wonder they were suspicious. He stated publicly his belief that all people born into the world are children of God. And as if that were not enough, he also supported the ordination of women. Case closed." The professor denied the charges. "I'm not a Universalist," he said, and he convinced them. After 4 hours of deliberation, they voted 21-11 to let him keep his job. Now, Robert Walsh wrote, "I confess to being a Universalist, but in fact, I am a Unitarian Universalist. But I wonder, if I were arrested and charged with being one, would there be enough evidence to convict me?" The Kansas City story proves that having the right beliefs is not enough. The Kansas City professor believed that all people are brothers and sisters, that every person has a piece of the divine spark, that women are the equals of men in the sight of God. That was not enough to bring a guilty verdict. No, if they're going to pin Unitarian Universalist on me, they will have to be able to show that I participated in and supported a Unitarian Universalist church. That is the only way to be sure. Beliefs, no matter how noble, must be embodied in a living institution, or they will have no convicting power. So once again, I accuse each and every one of you of being a Unitarian Universalist. Are you guilty or not guilty? Then you are sentenced to a lifetime of freedom, to a long and loving membership in this fellowship, and to a generous pledge to support the ministry of this church. Do you accept the sentence? Y'all are great. And I will say that this sermon was given on their Pledge Sunday. So the following part is from that Pledge Sunday sermon. So listen to these words. He says, "Good, because the court bailiffs have arrived to serve you your arrest warrants. That would be the pledge cards." Now this is some fire and brimstone. Your fine for being guilty of being a UU is 5% of your income. That may seem expensive, but not when you consider that many Christians tithe 10% of their income, and not when you realize that your contribution is not only going to create a better liberal religious church, but a better world. There is so much that we have done and are doing in this fellowship, and there is so much more we would like to do. So, quoting him, we encourage you to pledge 5% of your income, or to be working your way to that amount, perhaps by increasing your pledge by 0.5% every year until you reach that amount. But you don't have to, because it's not Pledge Sunday. So whatever your pledge, remember that it is a statement of your values and principles, and I hope it comes from a deep spiritual well embracing our unity on this planet and our love for all souls. And that ends Reverend McGee's sermon, and I will add that we pledge much more than money. We pledge ourselves. So, now what's next? Oh.